We often grow up believing that saying no is a bad thing, that declining an invitation, stepping back from a relationship, or pulling away from drama makes us cold, selfish, or even rebellious. Especially in environments where self-worth is tied to how much we do for others, setting boundaries can feel like a betrayal. But the truth is, boundaries are not about pushing people away. Boundaries are not walls. They are the spaces we create to be honest, to be kind, and to stay whole. Setting boundaries isn't rebellion, it's a declaration of self-respect. In my work as a researcher and storyteller, I've spent years exploring vulnerability, shame, and connection. One of the clearest patterns I've found is this: the most compassionate, grounded people are the ones who are very clear about their boundaries. That's not a coincidence. Compassion isn't sustainable when it's rooted in resentment. When we say yes to everything, when we overextend ourselves, betray our own needs, or avoid conflict just to keep the peace, we begin to erode the very empathy we want to offer. Boundaries are the foundation of integrity, not opposition. Choosing distance from someone doesn't always mean you're angry with them. It doesn't mean you wish them harm or that you're holding a grudge. Sometimes, it simply means you've decided that preserving your peace is more important than keeping up appearances. And in a world that constantly praises productivity and performance over authenticity, that kind of clarity can look threatening to others. People might call you cold or distant, not because you are, but because your clarity forces them to look at their own patterns. It shines a light on the parts of them that expect constant access to you without reciprocity or respect. When you begin to set boundaries, real, healthy, self-respecting boundaries, some people will be confused. Others will be angry. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've stopped doing what they were benefiting from. Maybe they were used to you saying yes all the time. Maybe they relied on your silence to continue behavior that was unkind or manipulative. Maybe they depended on your guilt to get what they wanted. And now, you're not playing that role anymore. This is where it gets hard. When people are mad that you've chosen distance, that you no longer engage, that you don't react the way you used to, this is often where the guilt creeps in. You start wondering, am I being too harsh? Should I just reach out? What if they think I don't care? But here's the thing, you can care and still choose space. You can love someone and still say, this dynamic is not healthy for me. In fact, because you care about your well-being and maybe even theirs, you're choosing to step back. It takes courage to do that. It takes clarity and strength to name what's not working, even silently, and decide not to participate in dysfunction anymore. There's a powerful distinction between caring about someone and taking responsibility for their feelings. You can't control how someone reacts to your boundaries. All you can do is be clear, be kind, and be honest about what you need. That's not rebellion. That's maturity. And here's something I've learned from countless conversations and interviews: the people who honor your boundaries are the ones who deserve to be close to you. The people who try to shame, guilt, or manipulate you for choosing peace, those are the relationships that often need to be redefined, or released altogether. Self-respect means knowing your limits and honoring them. It means not negotiating your well-being for the sake of being liked. It means not betraying yourself to make other people comfortable. And sometimes, it means letting people be mad. That's not easy. Most of us are wired to seek connection, to avoid conflict, to earn love through performance and perfection. But healthy connection doesn't require you to disappear. In fact, the strongest relationships are built on mutual respect, where both people are allowed to have needs, space, and autonomy. It's important to remind yourself that setting a boundary is not about making a statement to others. It's about making a promise to yourself. A promise that says, I will no longer shrink to make others comfortable. I will no longer pretend that everything is okay when it's not. I will no longer allow guilt or fear to dictate how I show up in my own life. That promise becomes a kind of internal compass, something you return to every time the noise around you gets loud or confusing. Of course, you will sometimes question yourself. That's human. Growth is rarely clean or linear. There may be moments when you feel lonely, misunderstood, or even judged. But there is a quiet, steady power in choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a rooted, intentional way. And over time, you begin to notice that the relationships that remain, the ones that grow and deepen, are the ones that can hold your truth without flinching. So if someone is mad because you've chosen distance and you no longer bend to keep them happy, that's okay. Let them be mad. Let them sit with their discomfort. That's their work. Your work is to stay grounded in the truth that boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges to healthier, more honest lives. They're not about rejection. They're about reflection. They say, this is who I am, this is what I need, and this is how I will take care of myself. That's not rebellion. That's radical self-respect. And it's one of the most courageous choices you'll ever make. One of the hardest and most liberating lessons we'll ever learn is this: other people's reactions are not our responsibility. We are not here to manage how others feel about our truth, our boundaries, our healing, or our growth. Yet, so many of us spend years, sometimes entire lives, trying to do just that. We try to anticipate, soften, and shape the responses of others so we can avoid discomfort, conflict, or rejection. But in doing so, we abandon the most important responsibility we do have: being honest with ourselves. The fear of someone being disappointed, offended, angry, or uncomfortable because of our decisions can be paralyzing. It starts young. We're taught to be nice, to be agreeable, to not rock the boat. Somewhere along the way, we internalize this belief that being liked is more important than being authentic. And so we become experts in self-editing. We stay silent when we want to speak. We say yes when we mean no. We laugh when we're hurting. We show up in ways that feel acceptable to others but unbearable to ourselves. But here's the thing: when we take responsibility for someone else's feelings, we give away our freedom. We start living in reaction, not intention. We become performers, always calculating our next move based on how it will land with someone else. And no matter how skilled we get at managing others' perceptions, we never feel safe because we are not being real. We're just being agreeable. That's not connection. That's control. And control is always a response to fear. It's human to want to be liked. We all want to feel accepted, understood, and loved. But if that acceptance is conditional on you hiding who you really are, then it's not true acceptance, it's approval. And approval is always fleeting. It's based on performance, not presence. It asks, what do I need to be in order to be enough for you? True belonging, on the other hand, starts when you stop negotiating who you are just to make someone else more comfortable. When you start speaking your truth, setting boundaries, or changing behaviors that no longer serve you, people will react. Some will support you. Others will not. Some will respect your honesty. Others will be threatened by it. That's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of where they are in their own emotional development. But it's tempting to make their reaction about you, to believe that if someone is upset, it must mean you've done something wrong. That's the trap. That's the old pattern we fall into, thinking we can prevent someone else's discomfort if we just choose our words carefully enough, if we explain ourselves better, if we soften the truth just the right amount. But growth requires clarity, not constant accommodation. When you say, I'm not available for this conversation right now, or I'm prioritizing my peace, or I'm not okay with being spoken to that way, you are making a statement about you, not about them. You are claiming responsibility for your energy, your time, your emotional safety. Their reaction, whether it's acceptance, defensiveness, or anger, is information about them, not about you. This is where it gets complicated. We often mistake empathy for overfunctioning. We think being kind means taking care of everyone's emotional reactions. But real empathy includes accountability. Real kindness doesn't come from pretending or pleasing, it comes from honesty delivered with care. You can be clear without being cruel. You can be firm without being mean. And you can care deeply without carrying someone else's emotional weight on your shoulders. Not taking responsibility for other people's reactions doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you ignore how your actions affect others. It simply means you stop abandoning yourself to manage emotions that are not yours to manage. There's a difference between being responsible to others and being responsible for them. You can be responsible to someone by being truthful, respectful, and kind. But you are not responsible for how they interpret, internalize, or react to that truth. Some people will call you selfish when you stop overfunctioning. That's a common reaction from those who benefited from your self-neglect. Others may accuse you of being cold, distant, or difficult. But that's often because they were more comfortable with the version of you who didn't have boundaries. The version of you who absorbed everyone's emotions, played the peacekeeper, stayed small so others could feel big. That version of you was never sustainable. It was a survival strategy, not a way to thrive. You are allowed to outgrow the patterns that once kept you safe. You are allowed to disappoint people who expected you to keep sacrificing yourself. You are allowed to say, "I love you, but I can't carry this for you." That is not unkind. That is deeply respectful of yourself and ultimately of the relationship. The moment you stop controlling other people's emotional experiences is the moment you begin to live with emotional integrity. You begin to trust that people are capable of sitting with their own discomfort. You begin to see that boundaries aren't just rules, they are invitations to build trust, clarity, and mutual respect. And most importantly, you begin to come home to yourself. Let people have their reactions. Let them feel their feelings. Let them misunderstand you if they must. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to stay true to who you are, to act in alignment with your values, and to make choices that are honest and healthy. You cannot control whether someone accepts your truth, but you can control whether you betray yourself to make it easier for them. So when someone says, "You've changed," maybe what they mean is that you've stopped managing their comfort. When someone says, "You don't care," maybe what they mean is that you're no longer abandoning yourself to show you do. And when someone says, "You're being selfish," maybe what they really mean is, "You're finally putting yourself first and I don't know what to do with that." Let them sit with that. And you stay rooted in your truth. Because your peace, your clarity, and your authenticity are not up for negotiation anymore. One of the most profound truths we can embrace is this: connection that's rooted in obligation is not connection at all. It's performance. It's pressure. It's a performance we put on, day after day, because we think we have to. Because we are afraid that if we stop showing up in the way others expect, always available, agreeable, self-sacrificing, then the love will go away. But real connection doesn't require us to twist ourselves into versions we don't recognize. True connection doesn't demand perfection. It invites presence. And presence is only possible when we are being real. There's a world of difference between showing up because you want to and showing up because you feel like you have to. So many of us have been conditioned to believe that love means obligation. That to prove we care, we have to put ourselves last. That to be a good daughter, friend, partner, or colleague, we must always say yes. Always stay silent. Always put other people's needs above our own. We think that's what makes us kind. That's what makes us worthy. But the truth is, when we connect from a place of guilt or fear or duty, what we're offering isn't love, it's resentment dressed up as love. And resentment is not a foundation for intimacy. When we abandon our authenticity to keep the peace, to meet expectations, or to maintain appearances, we may look connected on the outside, but inside, we feel lonely, hollow, disconnected. Because we are not actually there, our mask is. Our performance is. The version of us we've crafted to keep things smooth is showing up, while the real us sits quietly in the background, waiting to be seen, wondering if anyone would still love us if we were honest. The people-pleasing, the over-functioning, the endless emotional labor we perform for others, it's often not about love at all. It's about survival. It's about the stories we were told growing up, the ones that said our worth is in what we do, not in who we are. The ones that taught us love is earned, not given. So we learn to perform. To produce. To show up for everyone else, while quietly disconnecting from ourselves. And the sad irony is, we lose the very connection we were trying to protect. True connection, the kind that nourishes our soul, is built when we show up as we are, not as who we think we're supposed to be. It's built when we say, "I can't do this right now," and the other person still stays. It's built when we share something hard and vulnerable, and instead of being judged, we're met with empathy. It's built when we stop trying to be palatable, predictable, perfect, and start being real. And yes, being real comes with risk. The risk of being misunderstood. The risk of being rejected. The risk of being called selfish, difficult, or distant. But here's the paradox: when we stop connecting out of obligation, and start connecting out of truth, we don't lose the relationships that matter, we lose the ones that were never real to begin with. We lose the roles, the performances, the dynamics that were draining us. And in their place, we make space for something deeper. Something mutual. Something honest. Authenticity doesn't mean we say everything that's on our mind, or that we don't show up when it's hard. It doesn't mean we're brutally honest at the expense of kindness. It means we bring our full selves to our relationships, our truth, our limits, our needs, and our values. It means we stop pretending to be okay when we're not. It means we stop trying to hold everything together alone. It means we stop saying yes when our body is screaming no. When we start living this way, some relationships will shift. Some will fall away. And that's okay. Because the people who truly love you, the ones who are emotionally mature and grounded in their own worth, won't need you to shrink to make them comfortable. They won't punish you for having boundaries. They won't make you earn your place by overgiving. They'll meet you where you are, and they'll stay there not because they feel obligated, but because they want to. There is incredible freedom in being loved for who you are, not who you perform to be. There is nothing lonelier than being surrounded by people who only know your mask. But there is nothing more fulfilling than being deeply known and still deeply loved. That is the gift of authenticity. That is what real connection looks like. So the next time you feel pulled to say yes out of guilt, to smile when you're hurting, to show up just because it's expected, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of love, or out of obligation? Am I honoring myself, or abandoning myself to keep someone else comfortable? Because every time we choose authenticity over obligation, we strengthen our connection with ourselves, and only then can we build real, grounded connections with others. You are allowed to choose yourself and still be loving. You are allowed to say no and still be kind. You are allowed to outgrow relationships that were built on performance, not presence. And you are allowed to walk away from anything that asks you to be less than who you truly are. Because connection that costs you your authenticity is not connection, it's control. And you were not made to be controlled. You were made to be seen, to be heard, to be known. And most of all, to be loved as you are. If you have friends who would connect with this message, please share it with them. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you more than you know.